What does motherhood teach us about leadership?
Being a mum hones your resourcefulness, it hones your empathy, it hones your ability to understand the impact of your actions, it hones your resourcefulness, it stretches your patience beyond limits you never knew you had. It helps you understand what good feedback looks like. It helps you understand the power of praise.
Welcome to Motherhood Advantage, the podcast exploring leadership intelligence developed through motherhood. For decades, we've heard about the motherhood penalty, but what about the motherhood advantage? In each episode, we talk with one extraordinary mother about how caregiving shapes the way they think, decide, and lead, because motherhood is leadership.
Hello. I'm Dr. Marie Rivera, and this is Motherhood Advantage. Today we have with us Karen Sigalas, and she has 3 children, and she lives in the UK, and she is a speaker and leadership coach with clients from all over the globe. And Karen, thank you so much for coming in with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your business, please.
Okay, so I've been in business for over 20 years. So if you're watching this, I'm older than I look, I hope. I work with leaders right at the point where judgment and pressure meet. So I help them stay focused and clear-minded when they feel like they want to hesitate, overthink, where self-doubt is really loud. So that with the people that they lead, when they speak, they can speak with influence, credibility, and really garner that trust. So I've been doing that for the last 20 years, and I love it. In addition to that, I have 3 kids, 2 teens. So if you know, you know.
I do
My
know.
eldest is just about to turn 18, and my middle is just about to turn 16. Oh, joy. And my youngest is 12.
Amazing. You were talking about that point where the self-doubt creeps in, or have you found in your practice that that's a specific point? And are you able to work your clients through that where it's not still happening? Because maybe I should come talk to you more.
Yes, and yes. 2
Okay.
things though. Well, actually, first thing is we can never, ever, ever eliminate self-doubt. But what we can do is we can make the voice of trusting ourselves louder. So when that happens, means we overcome that perfectionist mindset. We overcome the overthinking and the over-analyzing and the hesitation. Because what happens is, even if we don't know what the outcome is, we trust ourselves to handle it. And that is the golden key that unlocks everything. And so that's how you can quiet down that self-doubt and you can move forward and not stay stuck. Because actually what's going on in our brain is our brain is actually trying to protect ourselves from judgment, from shame, from looking bad. And whilst that might have helped to some extent in evolutionary times, it doesn't help now when we want to progress and we want to move forward and we want to learn and we want to grow, because what happens is we just stay stuck if we stay there, and we get in a really destructive perfectionist mindset if we stay there. So we don't actually achieve our goals.
Well, that is words to live by, and I clearly should spend more time with you. So thank you for that already. We have our first coaching lesson of the day. I appreciate that. As for our motherhood advantage, can you tell me what you think of when you think of mother? What does that role mean to you?
So when you say the word mother, unconditional love and strength is what I really think of when I think of my mother. And when I think of me as a mother, it's actually really quite interesting, because when I was younger, I used to say to myself, no, I'm not going to have kids. I'm really career focused and that's for me. And I'm an only child. And I remember growing up, people used to say to me, don't you feel lonely not having a brother or a sister? And I always used to say no, because I didn't know what I was missing. And so for me, I guess in a way, the thought of having only one child or no children was fine. And then something changed. It was after I was 30 when I had my first child. But I decided, this is the plan. I'm going to have kids. Not only did I have one, I ended up having 3. And my last child, I turned 40. And 6 weeks later, I had him. And what it means for me to be a mother, it has absolutely changed the landscape of my life in ways that I probably would have never, ever imagined. It's made my life rich. Now, when I was little, I didn't feel like that because it was so bloody hard. It was really, really hard.
I know.
I remember when I had one child and I was thinking, this is so difficult. You know, it's like a massive change. And then I had my second 22 months later. I was like, how easy was it having just one? And then when I went to my third, I was like, okay, this is fine. The step from somehow 2 to 3 was easier. But what being a mother gave me actually was you really learn how to put other people first. And it's not something you deliberately wake up and say, that's what I'm going to do. But it's that natural instinct that you feel. Like I would walk over fire for my kids. They've brought me so much love and strength, actually. And I realize also that it's such a gift to have one child because it means you can give them all your attention. And that's what I've realized as I've had multiple kids and I become a mum. Biggest gift you can give them is your time and attention, obviously your love. And it doesn't mean you have to give up work, but it means the time that you're present with them, you need to be really present. I remember my youngest a few years ago, we had a balloon and we called the balloon Bob and we put eyes on it and everything. I think he might have been about 10. I happened to be working at the weekend because the thing about me is I really love what I do. I love coaching, love delivering masterclasses, and I love speaking. It doesn't feel like work for me. It's my own business. So I love it. And so I'm working away at the weekend and I'm really getting into it. I don't know if you've ever experienced this where you're just like really into it and you just don't want to stop. No one's telling you to keep working. We just don't want to stop. Anyway, he asked me to play balloon tennis. And I'm like, Alex, sorry, I've got to do this. And then I thought about this. I got to the end of the day and I thought, what am I doing? Where's 10 minutes? And you know what? I stopped. And then the next day, which was the Sunday, I'm like, come on, Alex, let's play. And we laughed and we joked. And I remember this like it was yesterday. He's like, okay, if you miss the balloon tennis, you have to do 5 press ups. I'm like, can I ever do press ups? Anyway, we had so much fun. And it just reminded me that you don't have to sacrifice your work, your life, but what you do need to do, I think, for me as a mum, is to be fully present with my children when I can and give them the gift of feeling valued, seen, and loved in that moment. Really. Yeah.
Love that. Balloon tennis with Bob.
With Bob. Bob the balloon. It was such a revelation. I just thought, you know how you make things over urgent and you prioritize things that actually aren't really that important. So I stopped doing that.
Very well. You mentioned the strength and the love and, of course, the attention and care that we give our kids. What are the other kind of roles that you perform as a mother?
So as a mother, my skill for empathy has been honed, which is one of the key leadership skills you need, I think, to
Yes.
be a successful leader. So especially with teens, I'm going to just, it's tested when they're young, but it's tested in a whole nother way when they're teens. And, you know, I'm human, just like everyone else, and I'm not perfect. I know the tools, I know what to do, but sometimes when the red mist descends, it's hard. And what I've noticed gets the best results for the situation, for me and for them, is start with empathy. So you acknowledge what that feeling is, much like you do in leadership. So if you have to deliver a very tough message, you're in the middle of change and there's restructure, people are going to lose their jobs or their roles are changing in ways that they might not be happy with. So that would be the equivalent of at work, dealing with a teenager. It's starting with, I know this is going to be frustrated and I can see that you're frustrating. You know, just start there. You acknowledge how they feel. And then say the message, say it once and leave the space, not over explaining. And I think often as leaders, and I'm talking about mums as a leader, because we over explain because we're worried about the relationship. We're worried that it's going to damage the relationship. Even if we're having a moment, we still want to preserve that relationship with our child. Sometimes you just got to say the thing and just stop and allow the person to have their reaction. And sometimes it's not about pushing, it's just about saying the message, having them understand that we get their frustration, even if we're on different sides of the fence. Actually, we're not, we're on the same side, looking at the problem together. That's how I would approach it.
I think I'm very much guilty of being an over explainer. And as you're saying that, to think, say it once and leave the room, that's not usually how I do it. And that's something to think about.
It is because we do it because we want to justify ourselves. We want to be liked. Where we're coming from is we want to make sure the relationship's okay.
Yeah.
Or we want to justify what we're trying to say because we know better. Because, of course, we're mums. We've got this
Of
wealth
course, of
experience.
course.
They don't know. And it's just too much. It feels like a lecture.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah.
the defenses go up straight away. That's what I've noticed. So one of the skills is really being empathetic as a mum. The other is, again, I've been really noticing the power of this, is listening and listening
Mhm.
to understand, not reply. So when we get to the teen years, you might get a grunt. How are you? Okay. And that's it. And you're like, wow, they've spoken to me. They've come out of their room and they've, you know, they've communicated. Sometimes what I've noticed is places like the car, you're taking your child somewhere, some friend's house or picking up from a football match or something, and the car is a great place to have a
Mhm.
conversation. I think partly because we're trapping them, but also because they don't have to make eye contact with us. It's not so
Yeah.
intense. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, it can be just like a simple conversation. We'll start off with like, how are you? How's your day? And then stop talking. And then I notice I'm the sort of person when thinking about my two girls here, when they start talking, I want to say, yeah, me too. I know what you and sometimes it just shuts them down. You just don't. You just stop. You listen to understand, and that's it. You don't speak. So for me, I like chatting, as you can see. It feels really uncomfortable to stop talking, but that's exactly when the other person fills the space and they say the things that they want to say. And what I've also noticed is not to judge. I want to give an opinion about that person or about that situation or about that thing. Don't. Just being non-judgmental, particularly as a mum, I think is a skill that I've got wrong and I've learned to correct because it gets the best for my teens and for the situation and for my relationship. And as leaders, when you are at work, listening to understand rather than jump in with a solution or what you think is a problem is the key to reducing conflict, to having the person feel really seen and understood and valued, even if your opinions are different. So I think those are the key skills. Oh, and one more I would say is the idea of being really compassionate to the other person.
I love that I'm gaining all these lessons and reminders this morning as we chat. Thank you, Karen.
My pleasure.
So, and it kind of leads into our discussion on leadership. And you've mentioned some of the very real similarities that carry over into both those situations. I'm wondering if you notice a lot of differences in the two settings, or any, in the values or in the skills, the way you approach it. And has there ever been a time when you specifically use your motherhood skills in the paid workplace, or vice versa, use those paid skills at home?
All the time. Being a mum hones your resourcefulness, it hones your empathy, it hones your ability to understand the impact of your actions. It stretches your patience beyond limits you never knew you had. It helps you understand what good feedback looks like. It helps you understand the power of praise. It really shows up your mistakes as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you become incredibly self-aware so that when you go back to work, so I work with also mums that go back to work and they feel not very confident, they feel out of the loop, but absolutely not. They've just had a masterclass for X amount of months or X amount of years on how to hone your skills in ways that nobody else can teach you
Right.
because you're doing it every day, 24/7. You don't stop. And so
Right.
if you imagine if there's an athlete honing their skills like that, the level that you return to work at is huge. So you can manage conflict much better. Office politics, you just don't get involved. I think where speaking with influence and having executive presence, those are the areas that perhaps need a different angle when you're back in the business world, because there's a certain way that you speak to young kids, certain way you speak to teens, and a certain way you speak to your adult children. But what I think that also helps is understanding, when you're in the workplace, your audience, what messages do they need to hear so that they can listen. So, for example, if I was talking to somebody who was very rules-based, very process-driven in the organization, I would talk about all of the risks that we would avoid if we did this thing. If I was talking to somebody who, I think about when my kids were younger, who likes big ideas and has very dynamic and loves enthusiasm, I would talk about how enthusiastic I was about this particular idea and how that could bring them on. It teaches you different ways to adapt your message depending on who your audience is, I think, for me.
That comes up a lot in our research and talking about the communication skills, because it's one thing communicating with a 2-year-old versus a 20-year-old or a 40-year-old at your workplace. And it kind of goes back to that empathy and that listening and just bringing all those things together so that you can best connect and get what each of you need in that situation. Can you think of a time? I'm thinking about either growth or change, all of that, a time or an incident that reflects growth as a mother. And it could be your personal growth, or maybe you've helped your child through a difficult time
Well, yeah. So
every day.
a couple of things, actually. My middle child was an amazing gymnast, and I'm
Mhm.
talking national level. So we're talking 22 hours of practice, like
Yes.
full on. And I remember when she was younger, as she was starting out, we had traveled about 3 hours to get to this place and do the competition, a whole day competition, then come back. It's another 3 hours. She didn't get placed. She didn't get in the top 3. I remember this. She was sitting at the back of the car. So she was quite young. So she wasn't able to sit in the front seat yet. And it was a really dark journey home. She wanted to give up.
Mhm.
She never wanted to do gymnastics again. She was really, really, really down on herself. It was really a difficult situation. And I couldn't engage her rational brain. There's no amount of me rationalizing and explaining and giving the perfect answer, because she wasn't in a space to hear it. And so all I said to her, I remember realizing this as we were many hours into the journey, saying to her, look, done your best, you know where to improve, and it's okay to feel the way you feel. And it really taught me that you don't need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to have someone cheer up, to feel better, to put a Band-Aid over things and make it all sunshine and roses and unicorns and rainbows. Sometimes growth actually means demonstrating and telling that person you're there for them when they're ready and letting them have that emotion. That was a growth moment for her and for me, knowing that sometimes you just got to let it go. It's not about me needing to fix it. It's about me letting her have that feeling herself. Yeah. And she went on and she did go back to gymnastics, and she went on to do very well. But I remember that was a real moment. Another moment that I think is going to just be locked in my core memory for life is I didn't realize how much of an impact I was having as a mum on my children. Because, as I said, when you're in the teen years, maybe this is just me, I don't know, you think they don't really like you very much. It can feel really tough. I don't know.
I feel that,
Like,
yes.
it can feel really, really tough because you love these bodies with your heart and soul and every inch of you. So it feels really tough. I remember I was at home. My eldest was on the way home from school. She sent me this really garbled text message. I'm like, didn't really understand what she was talking about, but I could understand that she was really excited. As she got home, and I asked her, what's going on? What's happened? And then she goes to reveal that she went to sign up for part of the head girl team in her school. So she's in the sixth form. So I know this is airing in globally. So this is when they're 18 in the last 2 years of school. And she went for a diversity and inclusion role. Now, to do this role, she had to have a panel interview. She had to give a speech. She had to do an essay, and she had to do something else. She didn't tell me she was doing all of these things. I don't know. She probably didn't want to get me excited and then disappoint me, or I don't know what, but she didn't tell me. But she told me she'd got through, and there was maybe 20 girls going for this position or more. It's quite a prestigious position. She told me that one of the questions they asked was, who was her role model? And she had said it was her mum, me, because
Oh,
I taught her to have a voice, to speak up for what is right in the world. And she said to know when to quiet, to give other people space to speak. And when she was telling me that, I thought, first of all, I thought I would be the last person on the earth that she would quote as a role model. Absolutely, I really did. And it just brought home in many ways that all these ears are listening, all the eyes are watching, even when you think they're not. And the gift we have as mothers, as parents, to give our kids in terms of helping them understand that they belong and that they're worthy to walk through this world because they exist. That's it. Not because of the results they get, the schools they go to, the jobs they have, or the partners they have or have not, or the way they look or they don't look. No, they get to walk through this world knowing that they're worthy because they exist. And it plays out when your daughter comes back and says, you're my role model. So for me, that was a real moment of growth, of realization of the impact that we have as parents. And of course, I get things wrong all the time, but it's good to know that when it counts, they remember the things that raise them.
it's pretty amazing when we get to see our kids, not only when they succeed, but sometimes you hear them say the things that you've been working on or modeling, and all of a sudden they do it just right, and you realize, oh my gosh, we're getting through. We are raising this fine human, and it's a feeling just so special as a parent, and
It
sometimes more
really
rare
is.
than I would like, but you notice it and you hold on to it. I love it. I think that's incredible. And I'm thinking about how lucky your kids are to have a leadership coach for a mom. And
Thank
I was
you.
also thinking about how amazing that would be if all moms had a leadership coach and got to take the time to think about these things and almost how we can make our practice as a mother even better. We do it by necessity all day, every day. And just to have the space to be a bit more intentional about it would be really incredible. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I think as mums, we don't realize the skill sets, the value that we bring to
Yeah.
everything. We don't
Thank you,
realize that. So
Karen.
when I think about the women that I work with, a lot of the work that I do is helping them understand the value they bring,
Yes.
helping them shift the way they see themselves in such a way that when they do, other people notice it when they walk into that room. As women, we discount a lot of what we do. I had a client and she was talking about her role. She was a director in a media agency. She was thinking about her next move. She had 2 young children and she was saying, I know I should be more ambitious. What? What do you mean? Yeah, I know I should be more ambitious. And we broke it down. And I'm like, well, tell me, what is it you like about what you do? What is it that you have in your life that you are really grateful for? And we had a whole conversation around it. And long story short is she liked the flexibility her current role gave her so that she could be there for drop offs in the morning. And that when she came home, she had enough energy in her body to be with her very young kids. I feel like they were around 6 and 4 or 3, quite young, so that she could be around them. And I'm saying, okay, so I'm saying, right. So right now you're telling me the work you have is great, the flexibility you're prioritizing. And then she realized that actually this is what success looks like for her right now.
Yes.
And it's really important, this. I just really want to emphasize this because we often judge ourselves by other people's standards. I should be this level then. I should be going for this then. I should have children then. I shouldn't have children then. Whatever the thing is that we're judging ourselves by other people's standards. But actually, what's true is we have different seasons in our life. As a woman, as a mother, as a leader. I remember in my 20s, I was a consultant. I went traveling all over the UK, staying in great hotels, and I loved that life. And then, things changed. I got married, different things were a priority, kids were a priority. I set up my own business so that I could be there for my children, go to assemblies, go to sports days, and that's fine. And that was success for me. And we realized that success for her in this season of her life was exactly where she was. So then we worked on understanding what is she really grateful for? And that's such an important practice to do. You were just talking, what can we do? And I would absolutely say to every single listener out there, no matter what season you are in your life right now, is to start the day by thinking about what is it you're grateful for and why. That is the most important bit. Why? Because then you start to understand all of the things you have and then apply it to work. And then start to strip away all the judgments from other people and think about, okay, well, then what does success look like for you right now in this season of your life? Knowing you can pivot, nothing's set in stone, people. And this is where the self-trust comes in. This is where a lot of my work is that you trust yourself and your skills and your capability enough to pivot no matter what era you're in right now.
It's so true. And as moms, can't possibly know what's coming. And that ability to adapt and pivot. And you're even talking about those mother skills and how we forget, or maybe I feel have been kind of forced to minimize some of those skills and how they really do apply to the workplace. And that is definitely what our research is looking at because, we already mentioned communication, we mentioned empathy, the ability to adapt and pivot, all of these things that are directly related to the paid workplace. And yet people don't notice or don't care that mothers are doing that every day. I'm not really sure where the disconnect is, but that's kind of what we're looking at in our research. And we want moms to be able to see that indeed they do all of these things. And we want the people who are not moms to also be able to see that moms are doing all of these things.
I think what you said, the particular bit that was particularly insightful was around actually, we need to start with ourselves, which is the work that I do. The way you have other people notice the skill sets that you bring is to first understand the impact and the results that you get doing what you're doing. It's really important. So if you think about it, when the kids are really little, you are surviving on like 3 or 4 hours of sleep. You're still able to look after a tiny human and keep them safe and give them love
Yes.
on minimal amounts of sleep. So you have resourcefulness within your bones that no other person will have unless they've been a mum. So it's about understanding like what impact that means. So that means that turns into I am resourceful, I am capable, I can get through hard stuff. And I've done
Yes.
that for the last X amount of years. So often the way I work is when you're having that moment, say you're back at work and like what you've said, you've minimized your skills, you're feeling self-doubt, you're feeling like, oh God, I don't belong here. Look at these other people who haven't had a career break or haven't had kids and look where they are. And all of this judgment and internal dialogue that's like eroding ourselves. If that's going on, first of all, you need to calm your nervous system. You need to take a deep breath in and allow so in your amygdala, it's like an alarm bell that's going off. And it's like, there's a fire, there's a fire, there's a fire. We've got to keep you safe. We've got to keep you safe. So you're not thinking properly. So the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain that comes on, that helps us feel logical and calm and process information is offline. So the first thing you need to do is like take a breath to allow your nervous system to calm down. And then in that moment is to think about what are some of the harder situations that I've overcome in my personal life? How did I do that? And I'm that same person. It's just the situation is different. So it's really recognizing the value that you bring. Do you know that thing about anti-fragility? If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Yes.
So you're like a superhuman when you come back to the workforce as a parent.
Yep. And I'm thinking every time you talk, Karen, that really moms need to spend more time with a leadership coach. But today we're committed to the research, and maybe next time we'll break down some of
Definitely,
those skills and some of that other great stuff.
for sure.
And as a mom, can you just give us a little piece about each individual child, a characteristic or something that they've worked on or you're really proud of or impressed by? Something.
My youngest, first of all, I love his cheeky laugh. I really do. And, if I have a low moment, I just recall that and it just brings a smile to my face. It really does. And if I'm having a moment with him and we're not getting on for whatever reason, I remember at the core of who he is he's kind and he's thoughtful and he's loving. The trait that those are loads of traits about him, but something I really admire about him is he found maths really, really tricky. And this is about self-esteem. And he never thought he would be good at maths. Never. And we had this software and you kind of do 10 minutes a day and it says you're good, you're very good, you're mastery, like a trillion topics that you can imagine in maths. He started off on there as like needs improvement and he never believed ever he would get to mastery. And I'm not just being like humble about the situation. It really felt like that for him. And it took a while, over a few months, just persevered and he did his 10 minutes or 15 minutes and gradually he saw his score improve. And with that, I saw his self-belief and his esteem flourish. And I know that's a core memory for him because whenever things are difficult or impossible, I say to him, do you remember when you started off as needs improvement, you ended up as mastery? And now he's like in one of the highest sets in his school for math.
A big accomplishment.
Yeah. And I guess what's important about that story is that idea of a little and often and not giving up and being resilient will always get you results. And it's not about the score. It's about doing the reps, showing up when it's difficult, and you will always improve. So that's what I'd say about him.
I love that.
My middle child, she is incredibly kind and incredibly creative. So this is the girl that likes nails. She somehow taught herself and she comes out with all of these designs. We went on holiday last summer and I remember the receptionist said, oh, to my middle daughter, oh, those nails are nice. Where did you get them done? She went proudly said, oh, I did them myself. And so for her, for me, that trait is about knowing that you can be creative and be revered. It's not one box that fits all. It's not about being academic or creative or something. She's found her thing that she loves and she does it for pleasure. And so it's about finding something that really brings you joy. And for her, it's art and being creative and having that as a hobby or as a pastime, not because I told her or anyone did, because you just purely want to.
Beauty and creativity and accomplishment all at her fingertips.
Absolutely. And my eldest, what I love about her is she's feisty, she's opinionated, she's not always rules-based. Well, she is at school, but what I mean by that is she goes to an all-girls school and she's really hot on women's rights, who
Good.
you are as a woman, your identity as a woman, the power that you hold as a woman. The other day, my son was playing some football game on the TV and my daughter came back to me afterwards and said, Mum, it made me so happy. And I'm like, why? She said, because he's got female players on his team in this football thing. And so what I was immensely proud of her about is her moral compass, her fire around who she is, the rights of women, and that sense of equity and equality.
And maybe we can be learning from your daughter as well. That's wonderful. So as you run your own coaching business, a question that I have for the founders and business owners is how you knew, what made you decide or how you knew it was time to go out on your own, but also what you've done to balance that mom life, professional life for both yourself and do you have other employees or
No,
is
it's
it
just me.
Okay,
It's
just you.
me.
Gotcha. So yeah, how'd you know it was time and how do you do that balance?
Well, that's a really interesting story.
Okay.
Let's start with how do I know it's time? Well,
Mhm.
back in the early 2000s, the IT bubble burst and there was major
Yes.
redundancies everywhere. And I was a consultant at the time and I had survived 8 rounds of redundancy, got called into the room, thought I was having a project. So I
Mhm.
had there my notepad and my water ready to figure out what project was happening next. And then I was told I was made redundant. And I thought the world evaporated in that moment. I wanted to dig a hole and I wanted to jump inside of it. I didn't want to speak to anybody. The first time in my life, I felt like the biggest failure on the planet and I felt shame. It was really, really, really tough. And a friend of mine recommended a book called What Color is Your Parachute? And luckily, I didn't feel like this at the time. I mean, it took me a few weeks, but I got a really good package. And what it meant was for almost a year, a way of looking at it that I chose was I am being paid to think about what I want to do in my career. And I
Mhm.
never really ever stopped to think about what I really wanted to do in my career. You know, in the UK, you do A levels, you go to university and you get your jobs. And that's what I did. I didn't really think that deliberately about it. I just kind of fell into these things. And this was the first time in my life where I thought, well, what is it I want to do? And I was a change management consultant at the time. And I remember going through this book thinking, what lights me up is helping people transition through change, which led me into coaching. Now, at that time, there was a few coaches out there, but the name for coaches were that there were charlatans, there were snake oil people, there were life coaches, and, you know, they're out there to get your money, and they had a really bad rep. But I realized actually this is what I wanted to do. It really fired me up. I invested in training and then I got certified as a coach. And I remember telling my husband, this is it. I feel it in my bones. My husband said to me, right then, can you give me the business plan? Because I was asking, investors. And I'm like, what? I thought you like peed on my parade right there.
Yeah.
But what he was actually trying to do is trying to say, I want you to be a success. And this is how I know you can be a success if you've got a plan and all of this. Long story
Great.
short, is I invested in my training, I invested in my business, and it's brought me to here 20 odd years later, and I'm still in business. And it's where I found my purpose in life, really it is. And I wonder if that's why I had children a bit later in life, because I got so much meaning from the work that I do. I remember someone had been referred to me and he said to me, Karen, you've come highly recommended from my friend, but I don't know if I'm coachable. Let's see how this goes. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, it's fine. It doesn't work. Anyway, we ended up coaching together. And I think we coached together for about around 6 months. And at the end of it, he said, Karen, you're an angel sent from God to make life work. I will always remember that because he was so cynical. And then to say that afterwards, you know, it just reaffirms kind of why I'm here, why I'm on this earth, why I speak, why I work with women, why I want people to value themselves more. I want them to feel worthy. I want them to trust themselves, and I want them to have a successful life inside and outside of work. And I really want that with all my heart and soul. So I do everything, speaking, masterclasses and coaching, to get that message out there because I believe in it. And so that is how I got into coaching.
I love it. And an angel sent by God, just like the mothers for their children. If someone wanted to reach out and find out more about your consulting, how would they do that?
So I've got a website, which is www.coachkaren.com. So they can contact me on the form that's there, and definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. So that would be Karen Sigalas, leadership coach. And you should see a very smiley picture of me there. And there I talk about as well how to have presence, how to influence, how to exude credibility. Now, you can only do those things when you believe in and trust in your capability and your skills. That's where it starts. Before we plant all the techniques and the models and the psychology on top of it all, it starts with really valuing yourself and trusting yourself. And there's so many things that we can do to build that muscle because it's not very strong in most people. Ask any perfectionist, any overthinker, anybody who has self-doubt. We have all of those things. And I know because I was one of them. I'm a recovering perfectionist.
I'm still in there, but I love hearing all of your ideas. And we've talked about the strength and love and empathy and listening and resourcefulness, all of these things from motherhood and leadership. And are there any other thoughts you had, maybe as we're talking, or anything you'll take away or want to remember?
So the self-compassion, compassion for
Yes.
ourselves, really. I think being a mum is also a tough role, and we are our own worst critics.
Mhm.
I'm speaking from my experience as well. We play over and over the conversations that went wrong, the things we should have done and should have said. And wish we didn't shout and wish we didn't do this and that and the other. And sometimes just give yourself a break, woman. Just know that we are not superhuman. What I say to myself, actually, and what I say to my clients is, did you do your very best with the resources you had at the time? If the answer is yes, that's all you could possibly want of yourself. And just turn that compassion and kindness inwards and know that as a mum, you're last to serve yourself dinner, you're the last to sit down, you're the last on the list. But no, you actually need to be the first on the list, because without you, without us, there's no glue. It's not selfish. It's a really powerful thing to recognize the value you have, and that every thing that you do for self-care, paint your nails, do your eyebrows, put your makeup on, dress nicely, don't dress, whatever you do for yourself is a vote of confidence that you're worth it. That's what I want people to take away with. Self-care is really important.
Vote for confidence because moms are worth it. I love that. Thank you so much, Karen, for coming and joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and I love the invitation that we can come find you on LinkedIn and grab words of wisdom, or even at your website if people want to talk more.
Exactly. And I'm going to do free masterclasses on building self-trust. I do on a Friday, a 7-minute LinkedIn live at 1 p.m. GM time. You just turn up and I talk about similar to what we're talking about now, just for 7 minutes.
That's amazing. The perfect amount of time for moms. All right. Thank you so very much, Karen.
My pleasure. It's been a joy talking to you.
Motherhood Advantage is based on the idea that if mothers are trusted to nurture, protect, and shape the next generation, their expertise should be recognized everywhere leadership matters. These episodes build on the work of Intuitionship, a groundbreaking research study with nearly 1,000 mothers, and now a nonprofit continuing to explore that intersection of motherhood and leadership. If you'd like to learn more, make a donation, or recommend a remarkable mother, please visit us at motherhoodadvantage.com. This podcast is hosted by Dr. Laura Marie Rivera and edited by Liz Aderhold, and is dedicated to all of the mothers who keep the world running, because motherhood may just be the most powerful leadership training ground in the world.